the flight that took the Ayatollah back to Tehran carries the bacillus, the virus of what we're still suffering through, not just in the Middle East, but also in the West, which is the revolutionary Islamic government's mindset, its millenarianism, its totalitarianism, its subjugation of the people of Iran, and therefore the desire for the subjugation of people across the wider region, the revolutionary nature of the regime in Tehran since 1979. And this regime is what has spread its spores across the region, and I think as far as Columbia University and academia in the West. It's if the plane had not taken off, we would be living in a different world. And yes, so that's one of the reasons I start from 1979. I think people can't understand what is happening in the Middle East, or indeed the wider world now, without understanding the nature of Khomeiniism and what Khomeini and his successors have attempted to bring about.
So what is that nature? What is that mindset that you allude to?
Well,
that is being brought in, not on a train, but on a flight?
One, of course, as I say, is a theological aspect of Shia Islam, which is a very, very radical, perhaps the most radical version of it. There are strains of Shia Islam, as in Sunni Islam, that do not need to lead to this, but this is the one that Khomeini brought with him. He had very specific views of how to govern not just Iran, but all societies, particularly starting with all Islamic societies. He made his views extremely clear. He was an end-time cultist, among other things. And he had a specific animus, of course, against the Jews and the Jewish state. As you know, but many people do not. I mean, Iran and Israel used to have ambassadors. And I think there's a gentleman who's still alive I met many years ago who was the Israeli ambassador to Tehran in the 1970s. There was a normalization, which was, of course, completely reversed after 79, because the Ayatollahs have a particular death wish against the Jewish state. Some years ago, I don't mention this in the book, but I think I've mentioned it publicly before. Some years ago, a couple of friends of mine went for breakfast with the Ayatollah Khomeini, and I don't have very many friends who've breakfasted with him, so I'm sort of was all ears when they told me about it. And there was Spanish friends, and they were on a delegation. They were phoned up, would you like to have breakfast with the Ayatollah in the morning? Yes, who wouldn't? I'd love to. But my invitation got lost in the post. But anyway, the point is that they went. They said there were many interesting things. One was that there was a sort of choir of clerics behind the Ayatollah as he sat at the breakfast table. That's always slightly unnerving, or at least interesting. But the thing that they said, which really stuck with me, this is 15, 20 years ago now, was that to break the ice, they said through the translator, what do you do first thing in the morning? Expecting the Ayatollah to say, what they'd say, I have a cappuccino and, or tea. That was what they were actually asking. Was that the question goes through the translator, the Ayatollah replies, it comes through. The first thing I do in the morning is to work out how I can destroy the Zionist entity.
That's what he said to foreign journalists.
And so that
it's almost my immediate reaction as an Israeli, as a Jew, is to chuckle, but it's a little bit out of nervousness.
Yeah, sure, you bet.
Not that I believe that the Ayatollah wakes up, and I think he wakes up and, like most people, brushes his teeth, hopefully, has some coffee. But the fact that is an answer that he thinks should be given, especially to foreign journalists, knowing that it would make him look stronger rather than weaker. Right.
I mean, it's a very interesting question always with totalitarian leaders like Khomeini, is the extent to which you believe them, take them seriously or otherwise. And and the proximate threat of their crazed beliefs. But I do believe that in the period since October the 7th, on October the 7th, the people of Israel got a very sharp taste of what Khamenei, the backers of Hamas and others, what they really want. And having spent most of the period since October the 7th covering the wars in Gaza and Lebanon and Israel, one of the things we now know is that what happened on the 7th in the south of Israel was intended to also happen in the north. And the plan was, which Iran knew about, was that Hezbollah would come from the north, Hamas from the south, and they would effectively garrote Israel from the center. There's a very interesting question about why Hezbollah didn't go off at the same time, although they started launching rockets within 24 hours from the north, into the north from Lebanon. But it seems that Hamas did not want to communicate the date, although everyone knew this was the plan. Hezbollah, Hamas, Tehran, they knew this was a plan. Hamas could not find a way to communicate the exact date to Hezbollah without the fear that it would be intercepted. They had no means of communication that they trusted. And they, of course, thought that if they were intercepted, then the Israelis and Israel's allies could have stopped Hamas from the raping and torturing and killing and burning that they were so keen to do in the south of Israel on the 7th.
But to play devil's advocate or Khamenei's advocate, you said that Iran knew perfectly well. Knowledge of an action does not mean that you orchestrated the action.
No, but knowledge of the action plus arming of the actors plus funding of the actors and plus assistance of every possible kind to the actors does make you vaguely complicit.
Right. And this is true both for Hamas in the south and Hezbollah in the north.
Very much so.
And the Houthis, we must say.
And the Houthis. I mean, the Houthis have recently been discovered by dolts in the West who never meet a terrorist anti-Western group who they don't adore. Yes, the Houthis. I mean, who thought that the Houthis who can't do anything, I mean, they can't do anything, are totally hopeless and have an impoverished country thanks to their own actions and to the actions of some of their neighbors, who thought they could fire extremely developed weapons straight at Tel Aviv, and indeed almost hit the American consulate in Tel Aviv with an unmanned drone. Who knew that the Houthis, who can't keep the lights on, would be so filled with the most advanced weaponry? Well, only because of Tehran. If you are anti-colonialist in the current era and you're interested in the Middle East, please, God, focus on Iranian colonialism. Focus on the colonialism of I won't say Iranian because of my Iranian friends who are loath of the regime, the Islamic Revolutionary regime in Tehran. Look at and take on its rampant colonialism, which is happening in our lifetimes. Colonizing Iraq, colonizing Syria, colonizing Lebanon, colonizing Yemen, and so on. Don't give me this guff about Israel being the colonialist state.